I started talking to this girl named Christina a few years ago. We had met through mutual friends, and after a while of commenting on each other's Snapchat stories, I made the decision to just bite the bullet and ask her out on a date. It was the middle of July, so there were a lot of options for things to do, including going to the beach, or doing anything else that was outside. I decided to ask her out on a date. There's a beach by me that allows trucks to drive onto it with proper permits, and I frequently go there still to this day. With my pickup truck, it was a night that neither of us had work the next day, so we decided to go to the beach and have a little bonfire with some drinks. On a weeknight, past 8 o'clock, I knew next to nobody else would be on the beach that late, so it was what seemed like a perfect first date in privacy. She lived only 5 minutes away from me, so I picked her up, and then we stopped at a 7-Eleven, where I bought some firewood and other supplies for the fire. Then we headed straight to the beach. To be honest, I'd never started a fire before that, so I was scared of embarrassing myself, but on paper it sounded like a good idea. I pulled us onto the trail that leads to the beach. It's a decently long trail, and at one point there's a fork in the path where 99 of people turn right to the main beach, but I often go left because it's a lesser known, smaller, but more private section of beach. We went left when we got to the beach section. We were the only people there. I had my brights on and could see basically all the way down the empty beach. Not another truck in sight. I pulled my truck up on a sand hill, then parked it, and we started to unload the truck. I dug a hole with my shovel to place the firewood and some smaller fire-catching sticks, and honestly, I couldn't get a fire to catch. I tried for 20 minutes and couldn't do it, and I called it quits. It was embarrassing, but we laughed about it, so we just chilled in the dark for a little bit, drinking the beers we brought for a while. All we heard was the waves hitting the beach, but Christina was the first to point out that she heard something else in a whisper. I started to listen closer, shifting all my attention to that, and I heard what she meant. It was this whistling sound, not like a bird. It was a person for sure. Christina and I looked at each other with telling faces of how freaked out we were. The whistling was extremely close since we had no other light. I went into my truck and turned on the headlights, and I heard Christina scream. We both saw the back of a man's head hurrying out of the tall beach grass on the little hill of sand above my truck. He had likely been there the whole time watching us for some reason. I yelled to get lost to the creep. I went up the little hill and tried to follow him, but right away I lost sight of him. There was tall beach grass everywhere. He could have been hiding in any of it. I took out my phone to use its flashlight and got on my toes to get a look over the grass. Looking back, I don't even think I wanted to find him, so I don't know why. I didn't just get in the car right away and leave. Christina called me back to just get in the car and leave. Then, I heard the whistle again. It sounded way too close for comfort, like within 10 feet from me. Christina heard it too, and she once again begged me to come back to the car. I did. I went back down the little hill and started packing the chairs and bags into the bed of my truck. As I was getting into the truck, I stopped and heard a humming from the same spot. It was clear by this point someone was deliberately trying to scare us. We got in the car, and I switched my lights off and turned the engine on. I sat there for a few moments waiting, as if I knew that whoever was in the grass would come look at us after hearing the engine start and lights turn off. And I was right. I turned my lights back on. For just a brief moment, a man's face could be. The light being turned back on caused him to hide back in the grass. I was tempted to get out of the car and beat the guy up, but Christina stopped me and convinced me that he might be sick in the head or armed or both. She also suggested that we should just leave the beach, and I agreed with her. We drove off the beach, looking behind us to make sure that we weren't being followed. It was an extremely tense and frightening drive off that beach because of the number of crazy people that were out there. I have no idea what the man's intentions were, but nothing about that entire encounter was normal at all. When I was a kid, my family decided to rent a beach house for a weekend during the summer. Unfortunately, our stay was cut unexpectedly short, and here's why. On the first day, we spent some time at the beach and went out for dinner that evening. The sand dunes near the house were steep and perfect for adventure. That night, my brother Joey and I came up with the idea of sliding down the dunes. We found some large cardboard boxes in a closet, cut them up, and used the pieces as makeshift sleds. Our parents didn't mind us playing outside in the dark as long as we stayed close to the house. We chose what looked like the highest part of the dune and started sliding down on the cardboard pieces. Surprisingly, it worked pretty well. On Joey's third or fourth slide, he stopped at the bottom and shouted, "Tyler, what is that?" I didn't see what he meant at first, so I slid down again and followed his gaze. Out in the ocean, a dark object was sticking out of the water. The moonlight reflected off the surface just enough for us to make out the silhouette, but we couldn't tell what it actually was. It definitely looked like something was floating. A bit creeped out and too scared to investigate, we walked further along the shore and found another dune, not as high but still close enough to the house. Joey slid down first while I stayed at the top. I glanced back at the water and noticed that the same dark figure was still there. It almost felt like we hadn't moved at all, or worse, like it had followed us. I shouted for Joey to look again. As soon as he did, he ran back up the hill, clearly scared. We stood there trying to figure out what it could be. Maybe we hadn't gone as far as we thought. We kept watching it. It seemed to be gently bobbing in the waves. We looked back at the house, which wasn't far, and decided to get a closer look at the object in the water. Our best guess was that it might be an animal carcass, but we were completely wrong. As we got halfway to the shore, the object started to rise out of the water, and that's when we realized it wasn't floating at all. A figure stood up, towering over the waves, arms by their sides. What we'd been watching the whole time was a person's head. Terrified, we sprinted back to the house and slammed the door, shouting for our parents. They didn't seem too worried, assuming someone was just going for a nighttime swim. Even after we told them the figure seemed to be following us, our dad stepped out onto the deck with the lights on to check the beach. Seeing nothing, he told us not to worry. Later that night, we were in the room we shared when we suddenly heard our mum scream from the living room. We jumped out of bed and rushed out to see what happened. As we entered, our dad yelled for us to go back to our room, but we hesitated. We saw both our parents staring out of the window. Then we saw it too. Just outside, on the deck, was a completely naked man, smiling and waving at us. Our dad immediately pushed us back into our room and told us to stay put. From inside, we could hear everything. Our dad was shouting at the man, threatening to call the police. Then there was a loud bang on the glass door, followed by our mom screaming. Dad told Mom to stay with us while he made the call. We listened as he dialed 911, with more banging echoing from outside. Our dad isn't a large or intimidating guy, and he's not someone who would normally confront a threat unless he absolutely had to. The situation lasted a few tense minutes before the banging stopped and things went quiet. Soon, several police cars arrived. I remember seeing more officers in the house than I could count. My brother and I had to describe what we saw on the beach to help the police piece together what had happened. To this day, our parents believe it was most likely a drugged-out predator targeting kids. It was a terrifying and traumatic experience for all of us. Even now, more than a decade later, thinking about it still makes me deeply uncomfortable. And to answer the obvious question, yes, we left the beach house after that night. Our parents got a refund, and we finished the weekend at a nearby resort, but none of us really enjoyed the rest of the trip after what happened. When I was 20, my girlfriend Stevie and I decided to go watch the 4th of July fireworks at a nearby beach. Unfortunately, all the main parking lots were completely packed, and trying to find a spot was chaotic. Eventually, we drove further down the road and found a nearly empty parking area. A few people were already set up there, sitting in lawn chairs, apparently planning to watch the show from the lot, but Stevie and I wanted to be on the beach itself. We grabbed our blanket and drinks and walked toward the shore, passing through a tunnel under an overpass to get there. The beach was surprisingly deserted. It seemed like no one else had bothered to make the walk. We kept going for about 20 minutes before the fireworks started. Though we weren't close to the show, it was good enough, and we were exhausted from the walk. We spread out our blanket and tried to enjoy having the beach to ourselves. About 10 minutes into the show, I heard voices behind us. Turning around, I noticed a few people standing far away facing the fireworks. Nothing unusual. We continued watching until the finale, and by then, the mosquitoes were relentless. We packed our things and began walking back. We passed a few tunnels, most of them looked identical, but remembered ours had 2 garbage cans by the left wall. As we approached, a young man came out of the darkness and asked for help. I slowed down, but didn't stop entirely, instantly cautious. He looked like one of the people we had seen earlier on the beach. He claimed his friend was injured and pointed into a pitch-black tunnel, saying he didn't have a phone. Stevie seemed just as uneasy as I was. I carefully asked where his friend was, and he said, in the parking lot beyond the tunnel. But I wasn't about to walk into a dark tunnel based on the word of a stranger. It didn't feel right. I politely said we were in a rush and kept moving, pulling Stevie along. His tone shifted to anger. He insulted me as we walked away, but I didn't react. I quietly told Stevie to keep moving. I glanced over my shoulder repeatedly and noticed he was now following us, along with 2 others. That's when I realized he had lied. There was no injured friend. It felt like they were planning to jump us. I told Stevie to quietly jog ahead toward the tunnel with the 2 trash bins. I stayed behind a bit to buy her some time, knowing that both of us running might cause the men to chase. As I expected, the group was closing in. One of them yelled at me as I neared the tunnel. Stevie was trying to call me, but I couldn't answer. As soon as I reached the tunnel entrance, I knew I had to run. I sprinted barefoot, ignoring the pain, knowing they were right behind me. Thankfully, somewhere inside the tunnel, they gave up the chase. When I emerged into the lit parking lot, only a few cars remained, including ours. Stevie was already inside with the headlights on. I jumped into the car and, before pulling away, glanced back toward the tunnel. 2 of the guys were standing just a short distance inside, watching us. We drove off immediately,